Hey, all, and welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mike Lamb of Focal Point Business Coaching of Utah, and I'm
Buddy.
still Adam Gehabe, Focal Point Business Coaching of Cary. Um, thank you all for joining us again this week. This is episode 12, so yay, Mike, go us. Still in business. Um, it's not all that
It's
hard when we're the
exciting.
ones pulling strings.
Yeah.
But Listen, we're back, just you and I this week. Love these types of chats, and I kind of just want to throw a big softball at you and take a swing and see where this goes. But confidence and getting trust with clients is so important to the onboarding process and kind of where we go from there, right? So, the question I was hoping to ask you today is, how do you create that confidence in your client base and kind of break down those barriers so that you can get honest answers? Thoughts?
Thanks for the high and slow one. The softball
Yeah.
analogy, but this one really starts. Confidence starts before they have it. It starts with our relationship that we're building right away out of the gate.
Yeah.
Um, I think they have to trust us to coach them on items that they may not fully identify right now as being a problem. So they have to start trusting us with information and give us information
Hmm.
that we can use as a coach to build out a coaching program
Yep.
um, based on that trust. If they don't have that trust, we'll never be able to find that out, what those things are that could be possibly the weakness in their company or in their leadership style or their weakness, that they perceive they have. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
No, it totally does because, what I see is over time, as that trust and that ability to understand and build that relationship, really truly foster it outside of just, oh, this is a business professional I'm bringing in for some advice. You become a trusted advisor, right? You
Yeah.
become part of the team. That just happened to me, this week where they mentioned that, I was a teammate. And I was like, you know what? You're darn right I am. And A, it's a great feeling, but B, that means that I know that I've gotten to that point where I've broken down enough barriers. I've been able to show enough value. I've been able to prove the outcomes of the curriculum that I assign, and then more importantly, the experience and utilization that I bring to the table from my past life, that it's providing value, right? It's providing
Yep.
value with their better communication habits, with their better structure and layouts of how they are laying out their overall weeks. And that is leading to the unlocking of additional doors, right? And those doors lead us down different paths each week. I might have a curriculum built, right, for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I try to do four, but each week, you know, I get new pieces of information. New things are unlocking, and that's driving me down different paths. Do you see similar things? And then, more importantly, how do you try to stay on track?
I see almost identical. I come in and I learned from them the first few coaching sessions. You begin to find out more information. They get their trust with you. Um, then you can look at them and say, okay, we're going down this path right now, but you know what? I see these areas that we should really be focusing on and we need to jump into,
Hmm.
and they're going to make the biggest difference for you 1 month from now, 6 months from now, not 4 years from now, 5 years from now. We should get focused on these things that get changed quickly. And what does that do for them? They go with confidence back to their team, to their major or their executives or their leaders in their company, and they go with confidence and say, "This is what we need to be focusing on for this quarter. It's going to
Hmm.
make the biggest change in our company."
Hmm.
And when we can do that and help them that quickly, it builds that trust and it builds their confidence. We're not
So
coming in, we're not hired on as a coach to come in and make change ourselves. We're
that's right.
giving it to the leader of the business to take and make change in his team, and that builds their confidence.
Sure does. So if we were to, put out a how-to guide to go about hiring a coach, What would you say is the important aspects from a client's perspective that they should ask for, they should look for in a coach so that they have the ability to build that trust and that confidence quickly?
Listening
Okay.
is very important. Curiosity, asking questions,
Yeah, it's a good one.
and finding out more about the company, not just asking ancillary questions like, well, what did you do last year? What are you going to change this year? No,
Yeah.
specifics about things, diving in, and then background and knowledge of running a business and
Yep.
experience in not just one aspect of a business, but holistically, they can look at the entire, pie
Hmm.
and not just focus in on one small part of it. Because if you're going to change your business, you're going to change every department. It's going to
Well,
have some sort of
not
changes,
all at
right?
once.
Not all at once.
Yeah.
So we can identify where it needs to go to
Yep.
make the changes for everyone.
The other
I don't
thing
know.
I want to add to that, Mike, is I think personality is a really big play and factor. So yes, here at Focal Point, there's 250 plus coaches of, all across the world. We all come from different backgrounds, all have a similar background in, you know, leadership and all of that fun stuff. But the reality is you spend so much time with your clients, you need to like the person who's coaching you. That sounds so basic, but it's a reality. If you can't sit down and be comfortable in a room, I really, really like doing one-on-one in-person sessions because you
Yeah.
could just read so much more. The body
Yeah.
language, the demeanor, the personality. When you ask that good question, Mike, and you just kind of have them set back because you're like, man, it's a good question. You're like, I know, thanks, right? Um, but I think the personality and just getting along with your clients is a big part of it. And to be honest, a lot of that is on us. We have talked about personality traits and styles, and so I'm not going to bore anyone with that anymore, although I find it fascinating. But the reality is us being able to change our delivery, our tones, our cadence, the types of questions that we ask, I think is critical in building the rapport and the relationship in order to facilitate that trust and confidence.
Man, imagine going into a room with a coach and not wanting to sit there with them. What are you going to get out of that?
A very short-lived engagement, I would think.
Yeah. And I would hope that clients would tell us, "Hey, this isn't working." And
I asked
me
that.
as a coach, I would, yeah. What do you ask?
How do you think this is going? I don't wait for the post-session assessment. Um, I ask at the end of my sessions, and it's a real
Yeah.
simple question. It's not, how do you think this is going? It's, was that valuable? I ask the same question every time. And I always ask it with around 5 to 7 minutes left because it that is my trigger question to get people to answer about the stuff that we've done to date. And
Mhm.
it triggers something else that I drive to next. Okay, well, great. I really appreciate that feedback, but I'm picking up that maybe there's this new topic that we should talk about. Let's look at what we have planned next week. Do you think that it makes more sense for us to kind of shift some gears and spend a little time here? And it's like, yeah, that would be great because I've got all these pressing thoughts on XYZ. And so
Yeah.
I just use that very simple question, how are things going and was this valuable?
I'm
Because
writing that one down. Sorry.
steal it away,
I
pal.
probably should have that somewhere.
Well, whether it's
Um,
delivering a podcast, whether it's delivering a introductory call, a 20-minute call, doesn't matter. We have to provide value. We have to show people that, listen, we don't have to have all the answers, but we have to have tactics, strategies, and the ability to relate so that we can get the level of information out of you, the client, that we need in order to best serve you, right?
I had this experience yesterday. It's very similar to was that valuable at the end? I always start out with what's on your mind to
Yeah.
begin with.
Yep.
That's the very first question I ask a client when I sit down. I just say, "What's on your mind?" And I have seen that go for a 45-minute conversation before, just
Yes,
talking about what's on their mind. And there's a lot of coaching along the way
of
of
course
that
there is.
45-minute conversation that it starts. But
So
we all have something we're dealing with today that that might just need to get off our shoulders and need to be addressed.
it's funny you should
And
say that. So I
yeah,
just added a LinkedIn post the other day, and it was about you never know what someone else is dealing with. So constantly be thinking about someone else's state of mind, not just your own, right?
mhm. Yeah, it's 100%. It's trying to get them to open up, and they don't have somebody possibly on their team that they can just sit down and talk to about what's on their mind.
Mm.
You know, I think I say this a lot. A lot of owners have to talk to their spouse sometimes because they have no one else to talk to
Yeah, and
um,
that's not a
about
bad
what's on
thing,
their mind. No,
except
it's
they may
not.
not understand the pressures. We've talked about this prior. Leadership can be very lonely at the top. Whether you're a company of one, you're a company of 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, doesn't matter. You never understand the pressures that people are dealing with, the myriad of different problems that they're trying to solve simultaneously. And when you're constantly fractured in your mindset and thinking about so many different things, it's hard to get traction on any given one, which is why I always circle back to, all right, what's the biggest priority? I know you got 17 things going on today, Mike, but if you could only get one of those done, what would it be?
Mhm.
Right? That's a great way to recenter the conversation. So you said something, if you don't mind me taking you down a slightly different path.
Yeah, yeah.
The way that you open your meetings, which I love, by the way, um, do you find that that derails the discussion point that you had planned? And if so, how do you circle back and kind of tie them together?
If it's I wouldn't call it derailment.
Okay,
I would call it redirecting the conversation.
nice.
And my mind, it's I get way more value if we redirect and go the direction to that thing. Like you say, if we can identify that's the most important thing, the number one priority, and
Right.
if we go that direction, that's the direction we should be going.
Of course.
We're not jumping off the rails and gonna crash off the side. We're gonna keep going down that way. If I have a topic prepared and I don't get to share it, yeah, it's a bummer we didn't get there. But we got a lot more out of this session probably than we would have got if he would have been, or they would have been
Yep.
thinking about that one thing that was over here, and I'm trying to go down on this road over here.
Yep.
It's not my business, it's not my company. And if that's the priority and we need to get going that way, then let's get going that way.
Absolutely. I think you are basically talking about our ability to read, respond, and react. And
Yeah.
their number one priority at any given time is our number one priority. And having the background and knowledge to be able to facilitate a conversation that pulls out those key bits of information that helps them unravel a challenge that may be plaguing them today, yesterday, tomorrow. I mean, those are the biggest problems of the overall week, right? And so
Yeah.
our ability to kind of redirect, refocus, recenter the conversation around their biggest need is a huge value proposition for them, right?
Yeah.
Um, I love
Yeah.
it when we're able to solve a problem that I didn't even know was there before I sat down.
You you poke fun at me and my bookshelf up here that I always reach to, but
I
that's
I
why
love the
I have
bookshelf, man.
that. I
It's
have
good.
that bookshelf so that I read those books at night before I go to bed. I know it's really boring, but I need to have that because if we do derail as a coach, I need to be ready. I have experience, I have knowledge, but I get more from studying and getting background knowledge from books that
Mm,
I can help apply. And I study the modules and things like that that
of
Focal
course.
Point has too.
Yep. Yep.
But then I can be ready if they're coming at me with something that I'm not ready for. What do you do if you're not prepared to talk about it?
I can tell you what I don't do, which I don't BS somebody. If I'm not prepared to have a discussion in a particular topic, I'm very transparent and I'm very honest about it. Said, listen, this kind of caught me for a loop. Do you mind if I take my time and figure out the best way forward? And then more
Yeah.
importantly, I ask the timeline in which they want to discuss it. Just because I'm not prepared or I'm not up to speed, at least on where I want to be, that doesn't mean that it's not a time critical for them. So what I might do, Mike, is I might say, can you give me 12 hours to go back in and figure out the best path that I see forward? And then maybe if you want, we can push next week's session up and let's move things up so that we can get this addressed for you. But I want to make sure that I'm providing the best path forward that I see to help guide and more importantly, pull out the answers that you need. So, I think being prepared and having good solid preparation, we shoot for every time. Is it going to be achievable 24/7, 100%? I don't think so. And I don't think people expect us to know all the answers and have all the information, but we have to be able to at least ask the right questions. And so if you don't know, probe as much as you can and then be honest and say, I am not seeing a great path that we should be taking right now, but let me circle back. How do you handle that?
I mean, you pretty much hit it right on the head. If
Nice.
I'm not gonna make things up and try to act
You
like I
you
have all
can't.
the answers,
You can't.
it's just not gonna do either of us anything. It's gonna, if anything, fracture our relationship when they realize that that guy was just making crap up,
We
which
started
they
this
are gonna
around
realize
confidence,
that.
right?
Yes.
Confidence,
Yeah.
trust,
Confidence.
credibility. Um, we can't shoot from the hip. I think a lot of us, especially you and I, we've done that a lot within our careers in general. We were good under pressure. We were good at responding and reacting to things we weren't ready for. And so it's really easy to fall into the solutioning piece where we're like, well, if this was me, this is what I do. But that's really not our job. Our job is to ask the right questions and more importantly, pull the information out so that you can help identify your own direction and we can just guide you there. So, you know, I think it's really important for us to be honest with ourselves on what we're trying to achieve with each client and not fall back into our past. You and I were just talking prior to taping here how much we rely on our 20 plus year experience in industry X and some of those values and how we kind of utilize the focal point material plus our own material and a lot of the on the fly stuff. That's all me, man. Right? I
Mhm.
mean, how about you? I'm sure it's similar, right?
Yeah. It, it'll go always goes back to like, oh, I've seen this scenario, or I've done this, or I've been
Yeah.
I've made this decision and gone this route. Now I don't know anything about electricity. Thank goodness they don't allow me to wire houses, but I can coach an electrician on
Yep.
performance of employees, and I can coach uh, a leader on how to manage conflict in his workplace if it comes up. I've seen it.
Yep.
I've been there.
Of
Um,
course. Of course.
those little things come up every day in everybody's lives as leaders. And you and I have both witnessed it on multiple occasions during
I
our
know.
careers. So
Yep. So, question for you. Do you ever use the tactic of asking what is the biggest, let's call it fire drill or pain point that they have felt that week?
I haven't actually, to be
Okay.
completely honest with you. Do you?
I do. I do. And, especially if you're coaching multiple people within the same organization, I find it's a fascinating question because I want to see if it's the similar event or the same event for all people and personalities. It typically is not, because, well, everyone has a different focus. And let's be honest, we're human, so we're all me focused, and it's my problem, my issue, though that's the biggest, most important to me. But what I do find is when there is similarities across multiple people and personnel, I love hearing their perspectives on how they handled it, right? Especially if it's a group dynamic in the decision-making process. that is where I just get excited and giddy because I know that they don't always agree on how they kind of handle the situation. So I love to go talk through, okay, well, how did you handle that? And what'd you think of that conflict resolution? And what would you do differently? And when you can start to piece together those different views and then circle them back in your summary to the larger group, they're like, man, you're right. Revisionist history has helped me kind of see the things that we probably could have done better. And then it's, all right, well, guys, what do we want to do moving forward, right? If the same
Yeah.
thing pops up again or a similar, have you identified a blueprint in the way that you want to handle this type of situation? And I think that's really important, Mike, is what we drive on is to help people identify the blueprints. We don't want necessarily to be coaching someone forever. We want to give them the tools and equip them with the capability and the capacity to be able to recognize and identify the situations and then have a memory muscle, oh, sorry, muscle memory on how they want to handle that again based on an
Yeah.
outcome that they previously saw, right?
And
So,
that's the whole premise of coaching, right? We
yep,
don't want to do it for them. Every time they have that problem, I don't want to have to come and do a coaching session. I want it to be
I
something that
don't.
sticks and they can use it.
I
Because
don't. Yeah.
if you have that problem today, it's going to come up again.
Of course it is. Of course it is. I mean, once again,
It just maybe in a little variation difference or something, but it's going to come up and it needs to be handled the same way. And if you can go back on that.
that's why I love identifying and talking about blueprints.
Yeah.
Every possible problem, challenge has an equal solution. The question is, how can you identify the tactics, strategy, um, implementation items that you've done to get to that solution? And secondly, is that repeatable? Have you defined something that works? Either with your communication
That's
style,
that's
your structure of documentation, um, your use of technology in a particular space. It doesn't matter, right? But it's about identification of the action that created an outcome that you were happy with,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And so I love asking those open-ended type questions because I find that even though it may not be addressing what I initially planned on talking about, it tends to surface some of those bigger issues or challenges. And it may not even be something that happened this week. It's, oh, well, I'm really worried about next week and we have this happening. And I'm like, great, let's go here, right?
It's
So,
interesting that you bring that up. I had a very similar one this week where it was a communication issue that kept happening, and we had to go back to a simple blueprint, and it really would have solved everything when it happened. But what was happening is people not following org charts, and they were going to the
mm,
wrong person communicating their problems and issues, and that causes involvement of two more people that didn't need to be involved. When if their org chart was clearly blueprinted out and laid out, could have gone directly to the person that they needed to communicate with on that problem and do it
see,
in a manner that involved two people, not four, maybe five people. It ended up probably being more like six or seven individuals got involved in that one
when we,
because of the unclear blueprint with
yeah,
the org chart.
when we started this whole discussion, I was lobbing you softballs. Um, they just lobbed you one there, right? Because when you
Yeah.
start talking about org charts and getting into the ownership space, you can really ask a ton of good questions around accountability, responsibility, and ownership. A
And
lot of,
communication.
well, you beat me to it, man. A lot of the lack of communication stems and revolves around lack of ownership and understanding of ownership and the accountability space. And it's not just who owns it, but who owns it, not just for the delivery, who owns the pass off point? Because typically you need this between multiple teams, multiple vendors, multiple people, right?
Yep.
And having the ability to not only see who owns next, but who's the consumer of that and who owns that pass off point. That's super important. So I love when people start talking about org charts because it opens up the conversation to so much.
And I mean, to circle it back around to confidence,
Yeah,
knowing what your job is, what results you're going to bring to the company, and the metrics you need to track gives you that confidence because you can know clearly what you're doing. And
absolutely.
so,
Listen, you just wrapped it up nicely. Confidence. Confidence is king. That's what we shoot to build each and every time we have a discussion, whether or not I met you at BNI this morning or I've known you for 20 years. It's all about getting that confidence, and it's what is critical for us to be good coaches.
yeah,
Awesome. Well,
great.
we're coming up on 25, so I think that's pretty much our time to go wrap. So for everyone out there listening, thank you so much for joining us again this week. This is episode 12 for us. So we're going to keep on going, and we look forward to doing this and spending a half hour with you every week. So for myself, thank you all for listening. Mike, any last words?
Thanks, everyone.
All
Really
right.
enjoyed it. It was a great one.
Thank you all. Take care, and we'll see you same time next week. See you guys.